What if the ancient world wasn't as silent as we imagine? What if it screamed, whispered, and echoed with intentions we no longer understand? Across deserts, underground chambers, and forgotten cities, ancient civilizations created objects and spaces designed to make people feel something. Fear, awe, reverence, unease, a small whistle that sounds like a dying scream. Stone corridors that amplify a single human voice until it feels divine. Symbols carved into clay that still refuse to speak to us. These were not accidents. They understood psychology long before the word existed. They shaped sound, space, and symbols to guide emotions and maybe beliefs. And thousands of years later, the mystery remains. Because the most unsettling part isn't what they built. It's that we still don't fully know why.
In the quiet hours when the world softens and the edges of reality blur, there's a certain comfort in letting the mind drift backward through time. Not to the familiar eras that fill our textbooks, but far deeper, into the silent, shadowed corridors of ancient history where answers dissolve into mist. This section opens like a slow inhale, drawing the listener into a space where time moves differently and the forgotten whispers of old civilizations seem to echo just beyond hearing. The goal here is not to frighten, but to gently immerse, to create that nighttime stillness where every mystery feels a little more alive and every unanswered question seems to glow faintly in the dark. Ancient history often feels peaceful from a distance. Museum glass, faded stone, sandy ruins under a clear sky. But when researchers get close, really close, they encounter moments that unsettle even the most rational minds. There are artifacts that seem too deliberate, structures too precise, symbols too hauntingly familiar, and rituals too strange to neatly categorize. They are reminders that the ancient world was not a simpler time. It was a deeper one. And beneath the surface of everything we think we understand lie puzzles that resist explanation, resisting the comfort of certainty. In this introduction, we allow that contrast to unfold. The serenity of the past against the chilling unknowns that continue to trouble scholars today. The mysteries we'll explore in the documentary are not the loud, dramatic kind found in fictional tales. They are quieter, more unnerving in their subtlety. The type that researchers encounter alone in archives, in cave depths, or during nighttime excavations when the air feels too still. These are the secrets that slip under the skin because they seem deliberate, purposeful, and eerily preserved by time. They stretch from the deserts of Mesoamerica to the stone catacombs beneath Malta, from the resonance chambers of ancient Egypt to the windswept plains of South Africa. Each one carries a different flavor of the unknown, yet all share a single thread. They continue to inspire wonder and an uneasy curiosity even today. As you listen, the pacing is meant to feel like a gentle descent, step by step deeper into the past. We begin at the threshold, where the light of modern science still reaches, where explanations are possible and hypotheses flourish. But with each passing section, the environment will dim just slightly, as if we are descending a long staircase into forgotten rooms humanity once knew well, but no longer remembers how to enter. This contrast between what we know and what we can only guess will be the guiding rhythm of the journey. Researchers often describe a strange sensation when confronting one of these unsolved relics. Not fear, exactly, but a subtle tightening in the chest, a reminder that human civilizations once lived by patterns, beliefs, and rituals that now feel alien. Some discoveries seem designed to unsettle, as if intentionally crafted to provoke emotions across thousands of years. Others reveal an intelligence we still struggle to match, leaving scholars with the faint but persistent feeling that something important has been overlooked. In this introduction, we acknowledge that science does not erase mystery. Sometimes, it simply illuminates how vast the darkness truly is. The contrast between comfort and tension is central to the mood. The narrative remains slow, almost meditative, allowing listeners to relax even as they become aware of the eerie beauty of these ancient secrets. Imagine the soft glow of lamplight inside an archaeologist's tent, the pages of a field notebook fluttering in a gentle breeze, the sound of sand shifting outside in the quiet night. There's calm here, but also a hush, like the world holding its breath. This is the emotional landscape we inhabit in this opening section, a place where curiosity feels safe, even when the subject matter brushes against the unsettling. Throughout this introduction, we gently prepare the listener for the types of mysteries that lie ahead. Some are rooted in sound, ancient instruments that scream like the dying. Others hide in architecture, tunnels carved with inexplicable precision, chambers that hum with strange acoustics. Some mysteries live in symbols that resist decoding, or in artifacts no culture claims. And others lie in human remains that challenge everything we assume about ancient rituals, beliefs, and fears. These are not mere curiosities. They are mirrors reflecting the complexities of civilizations long gone. As we glide through this opening passage, we also highlight the emotional power of the unknown. Sleep-friendly storytelling thrives on the balance between serenity and soft, lingering intrigue. So we frame each ancient enigma not as a threat, but as an invitation, an opportunity to sit quietly with the unanswered, to wonder without pressure, and to let the mind lightly drift among shadows that are too old to harm and too distant to fully understand. When spoken aloud, this section acts like a slow breath in the dark, creating space for curiosity to bloom gently. The transition toward the first major mystery begins here. Just as the atmosphere settles into a quiet calm, we hint that some discoveries do more than challenge researchers. They disturb them, not through danger, but through the uncanny feeling that someone long ago crafted something specifically to evoke fear or awe. This subtle shift in tone guides the audience toward the first narrative step, an object that looks harmless enough but carries a sound so chilling it unsettles even seasoned archaeologists. By the end of this opening section, the listener should feel anchored in the mood of the documentary, a soothing darkness, a warm curiosity, a sense of drifting deeper into the past. And with that gentle descent complete, the path forward opens naturally into the first mystery waiting in the shadows, the haunting sound of the Aztec death whistle. Among all the relics left behind by ancient civilizations, few objects carry a presence as strange, as chilling, or as unexpectedly haunting as the Aztec death whistle. At first glance, it looks simple, small, carved, almost decorative, a harmless artifact that could be placed on a shelf without attracting any special attention. But its true nature reveals itself only when air passes through its hollow chamber. What emerges is not a tune, not a pleasant note, but a sound that mimics the raw, desperate cry of a human in their final moments. In this section, we step deeper into the heart of this unsettling instrument, exploring why even experienced archaeologists remain shaken by its existence and baffled by its purpose. The story of the death whistle begins with an unusual discovery in the late 20th century. Excavations in central Mexico uncovered a set of small ceramic objects shaped like skulls and skeletal faces. At first, they were assumed to be decorative figurines or ritual tokens, not instruments of any kind. Only by accident did a researcher blow into one, releasing a sound so piercing, so eerily human, that those present froze in shock. The whistle did not simply imitate a scream. It produced a scream that felt alive, full of terror and agony, echoing across time. It was a sound unlike anything previously documented in Mesoamerican archaeology. Modern researchers have studied the acoustic structure of these whistles with precise equipment, mapping their air channels, chambers, and resonance tubes. One surprising discovery emerged. The sound was not accidental. The inner architecture was crafted with intention, designed to distort airflow in a way that produces a chaotic, almost animalistic shriek. This means the whistle makers possessed a deep understanding, whether instinctive or engineered, of how to manipulate sound into something psychologically disturbing. The contrast is striking. A small artifact carved with simple tools, yet capable of generating a noise that feels engineered to provoke fear. The question that troubles researchers today is simple but elusive. Why would the Aztec people create such a sound? What purpose did it serve? There are three main theories, each equally compelling and unsettling. The first suggests a ritual use. The Aztecs had complex spiritual practices involving gods of death, sacrifice, and transformation. The whistle might have been used during ceremonies to guide souls, mimic spiritual cries, or signal entry into the realm of the dead. In this interpretation, the sound becomes less of a weapon and more of a spiritual doorway, a mimicry of the human voice meant to communicate with forces beyond. The second theory is far darker. Some archaeologists believe these whistles were used in psychological warfare. Imagine a large group of warriors approaching in formation, each carrying one of these instruments. 100 whistles blown in unison would not sound like music. It would sound like a mass of screams, deep, echoing, animalistic, overwhelming. The idea that Aztec warriors may have marched into battle accompanied by a storm of artificial human shrieks has left many researchers uneasy. Modern experiments have shown that even a handful of death whistles played together can trigger instinctive fear responses in listeners, raising heart rates and activating the fight-or-flight centers of the brain. The third theory falls somewhere between ritual and war. The whistles may have been intended to represent the voices of spirits or the cries of captured souls. The Aztecs believed sound had power to summon, to cleanse, to control. The death whistle, with its uniquely human, pain-filled tone, may have been used to blur the boundary between the living and the spiritual world, allowing rituals to unfold in an atmosphere where reality itself felt unstable. The idea that ancient people crafted these sounds intentionally to manipulate emotion is a reminder that the human mind has always been sensitive to the shapes and shadows of sound. Even today, hearing a death whistle can be a jarring experience. Museums that allow demonstrations report visitors becoming visibly uncomfortable after just a few seconds. Some describe the sound as a piercing human scream, others as a tortured wail, still others as a whisper that becomes a cry, but all agree on one thing. It does not sound like a normal instrument. It feels too personal, too emotional, as though the whistle is expressing something that should not be heard. Although researchers are trained to distance themselves from emotional reactions, many openly admit that this artifact challenges that detachment. The craftsmanship also adds another layer to the mystery. The whistles often resemble skulls or skeletal faces, their hollow eyes staring blankly, their shapes crafted to invoke death itself. They feel like symbolic objects meant to hold meaning, not just produce sound. And yet their internal structures are more complex than their outer forms suggest, containing small chambers and pathways carved with precision. The contrast between the simple exterior and sophisticated acoustic engineering makes the death whistle even more enigmatic. How do the makers understand sound so deeply? Was the knowledge passed down through generations of artisans, or did it belong to a select few ritual specialists? Another unsettling aspect is the scarcity of references in surviving Aztec codices. If the whistles were truly common, used regularly in rituals or warfare, one might expect more illustrations or written mentions. Yet they appear rarely, almost as if the knowledge surrounding them was intentionally limited or kept secret. This absence in the record leaves scholars uncertain whether the whistles were sacred, forbidden, or simply rare. The silence around them in historical sources stands in stark contrast to the overwhelming noise they create. Another layer of contradiction that deepens the sense of mystery. Some modern theories even push into more speculative territory. A few researchers have suggested that the whistles may have been used to induce altered states of consciousness, either for the individual sounding them or for listeners within a ritual environment. Sound, especially chaotic sound, can affect the human nervous system in powerful ways, something ancient cultures may have understood without modern terminology. Whether or not this theory holds weight, it reinforces the idea that the Aztec approach to sound was far from simplistic. As we near the end of this section, The transition toward the next mystery begins subtly. The death whistle serves as a reminder that ancient cultures often confronted fear directly, not by avoiding it, but by shaping it into objects, sounds, and symbols. This willingness to engage with the darker aspects of existence appears across many societies of the ancient world. And in Mesopotamia, thousands of miles away, another kind of fear took shape, this time not in sound, but in tangible forms carved into stone and hidden beneath the earth. With the echo of the death whistle fading into the distance, the path ahead leads down into an underground world where demons and protective spirits were carved into walls, locked away from the eyes of the living, yet preserved for us to find centuries later. Beneath the sun-baked plains and shifting sands of modern-day Iraq, the cradle of civilization conceals corridors and chambers that few outsiders ever see. Here, beneath the foundations of cities that date back thousands of years, archaeologists have uncovered a vast array of carvings, figurines, and sculptures depicting creatures that seem pulled from nightmares. These are the demon carvings of ancient Mesopotamia, figures with grotesque features, twisted limbs, and eyes that seem to follow the observer even after centuries of silence. Unlike the more overtly ceremonial artifacts, these carvings do not immediately reveal their purpose. They stand as both warnings and invitations, bridging the known world of human settlement and the shadowed domain of fear, superstition, and ritual. The initial discoveries were made in sites such as Ur, Nineveh, and Babylon, where excavations revealed intricate bas-reliefs and freestanding statues buried in temple precincts, private homes, and hidden chambers. At first, the carvings were cataloged simply as religious or mythological imagery, depictions of gods and spirits, or ornamental stonework. But as scholars studied the repeated patterns, the exaggerated claws, bulging eyes, and twisted postures, they began to recognize a deliberate intent to evoke dread. These were not decorative flourishes. They were visual manifestations of concepts that ancient Mesopotamians felt intensely: evil, chaos, and the unknown forces that could disrupt human life. One striking aspect of these carvings is their uncanny ability to resonate with the human psyche even today. Modern viewers, removed from the culture and mythology that produced them, often describe the figures as disturbing, sinister, or alive. The exaggerated features trigger a primal unease, tapping into deep-seated fears of predation, deformity, and unpredictability. Researchers note that the effectiveness of these carvings lies in their ambiguity. The figures are not wholly monstrous, yet they are unmistakably inhuman. This tension between familiar human form and grotesque distortion keeps the mind unsettled, creating a sense of the uncanny that echoes through millennia. Scholars debate the purpose of these carvings. Some propose they were protective devices, designed to ward off malevolent spirits or to safeguard sacred spaces. In this interpretation, the grotesque imagery functions like a warning sign to both humans and unseen forces, signaling that the space is watched, guarded, or consecrated. Others suggest they were cautionary tales in stone, moral lessons etched into the environment to remind viewers of the consequences of hubris, impurity, or neglect of ritual duties. A third theory suggests that these figures were part of ritual enactments, invoked during ceremonies to embody the chaotic forces that priests and participants sought to negotiate or appease. Each theory highlights a delicate interplay between fear and control. The carvings are unsettling precisely because they mediate the boundary between human order and cosmic unpredictability. The placement of these carvings is equally intriguing. Many are located in hidden or semi-hidden spaces, basements, storage chambers, or behind temple walls. This seclusion suggests that the Mesopotamians were aware of the psychological weight of these images. They were not meant to be casual entertainment. They were meant to be encountered carefully, perhaps only during specific rituals or by select individuals. The experience of discovering such a carving in dim light, in a quiet and enclosed chamber, would have magnified its impact, turning the human mind toward contemplation awe, and subtle fear. This spatial strategy reflects a sophisticated understanding of how environment and art combine to manipulate perception. Another layer of mystery lies in the consistency of motifs across vast distances and time periods. From Sumerian to Babylonian to Assyrian periods, certain monstrous forms recur with surprising fidelity. There are figures with horned heads, scaled bodies, and wings that resemble no known animal. Figures whose intent seems less about storytelling and more about evoking a visceral reaction. This repetition suggests a shared psychological or cultural logic, one that may have tapped into universal fears or archetypes. The carvings are both intensely local, rooted in Mesopotamian cosmology, and remarkably universal in their effect, bridging space and time in a way that modern observers find quietly disturbing. The carvings also intersect with written records, yet the texts often deepen the mystery rather than resolving it. Tablets describe demons like Pazuzu, Lamish II, and other malevolent spirits with vivid detail, recounting their behaviors, powers, and the rituals necessary to keep them at bay. Yet the same texts are often fragmented, ambiguous, or symbolic, leaving scholars to wonder whether the figures represent real spiritual concepts, metaphors for disease and misfortune, or a combination of both. The carvings function as both illustrations and active participants in this system of belief, materializing abstract ideas into forms that confront the observer physically and psychologically. A particularly fascinating element is the way these carvings interact with light and shadow. In certain temple chambers, candlelight or torches would cast moving shadows across the walls, animating the figures and exaggerating their features. What seems grotesque in daylight could become terrifyingly lifelike at night. Researchers argue that the Mesopotamians may have deliberately exploited these effects, creating a controlled environment in which the carvings became active players in ritualized fear. This blend of art, architecture, and psychology speaks to a level of sophistication that modern minds are still trying to comprehend. It is not merely superstition. It is an early form of experiential design, where space and object collaborate to shape human emotion. As the section progresses, we see the carvings as more than static objects. They are historical echoes of a culture deeply attuned to the forces it could neither fully understand nor control. By confronting these visual embodiments of chaos and evil, we glimpse the Mesopotamian attempt to navigate life under conditions of uncertainty, famine, invasion, disease, and the whims of gods and spirits. The carvings served as anchors, tools, and reminders, encapsulating anxieties that remain familiar even in the modern world. Their power lies in their ambiguity. They're not threatening because they move, bite, or scream, but because they are frozen yet alive, silent yet suggestive, present yet untouchable. Toward the end of this section, the narrative naturally shifts to another form of ancient fear, this time not carved from stone, but engineered from space itself. Just as Mesopotamian carvings evoke dread in confined underground chambers, other ancient civilizations manipulated architecture to produce unease and wonder in those who entered. The audience is guided gently from the subterranean shadows of Mesopotamia to the resonant, almost audible mysteries of Egypt's pyramids, where geometry and sound merge into experiences that continue to puzzle researchers. This transition sets the stage for the next section, where the uncanny meets the calculable, and fear is woven into the very structure of human achievement. Rising from the desert sands of Egypt, the bent pyramid presents a form unlike any other in the history of monumental architecture. Its unusual change in angle, halfway up the structure, immediately distinguishes it from the uniform slopes of the more familiar pyramids at Giza. To the casual observer, it might appear as a miscalculation, a builder's error frozen in stone. Yet researchers who study the bent pyramid with the precision of modern archaeology and engineering increasingly suspect that this apparent anomaly was intentional, part of a design that combines mathematical ingenuity, ritual significance, and perhaps even acoustic mystery. This section guides the listener into the serene, yet eerie world of this ancient monument, exploring how sound, structure, and human curiosity intersect. The bent pyramid was constructed during the reign of Pharaoh Sneferu, around 2600 BCE, a time when Egypt's architects were experimenting with scale, form, and precision. The lower portion of the pyramid rises at an unusually steep angle of approximately 54 degrees before abruptly shifting to a shallower angle of 43 degrees for the upper portion. For centuries, historians speculated that the change was a corrective measure, a response to structural instability. But modern investigations have revealed layers of complexity beneath the surface. Not only is the external slope carefully measured, but internal chambers and passageways seem deliberately arranged, with some spaces exhibiting unique acoustic properties that continue to puzzle researchers. Within the cool, shadowed halls of the pyramid, sound behaves in ways that suggest more than accidental design. The acoustic chambers are small, often narrow spaces where tones resonate far more than in typical stone constructions. When a human voice is uttered in these passages, certain frequencies amplify mysteriously, producing vibrations that feel almost alive. Modern scientists have conducted experiments with speakers, tuning forks, and vocalists, discovering that specific notes create a low, humming resonance that seems to linger unnaturally. The effect is subtle, almost imperceptible at first, yet unnerving, a soft vibration that wraps around the listener, filling the chamber with a sensation that feels both physical and spiritual. It is as if the architecture itself was designed to communicate with the human body and mind on a level beyond ordinary perception. Researchers debate the purpose of these acoustic properties. One theory suggests that they were used in ritual, perhaps to amplify chants or prayers, creating a soundscape that elevated the spiritual experience of participants. In this context, the pyramid becomes more than a tomb or monument. It transforms into a temple of sonic energy, a structure that merges physics with faith. Another theory posits that the resonance was incidental, a byproduct of architectural experimentation that coincidentally enhanced certain frequencies. Yet the precision of the angles, the careful selection of stone blocks, and the deliberate design of corridors and chambers argue against mere accident. Whether by intention or serendipity, the pyramid achieves an effect that continues to evoke awe and subtle unease. The visual and tactile aspects of the bent pyramid reinforce this sense of mystery. The smooth limestone casing, largely preserved compared to other pyramids, reflects light in a way that makes the structure shimmer under the desert sun, while shadows form deeper in the recessed areas and internal corridors. Stepping inside, one encounters narrow passages, unexpected chambers, and the sudden cool of interior stone, a dramatic contrast to the heat and brightness outside. The juxtaposition of openness and confinement, brightness and shadow, heightens the psychological impact of the space. Visitors often describe a sensation of being watched or of the walls themselves resonating with silent energy, even before any sound is made. The abrupt change in slope continues to intrigue both architects and historians. Some believe it was a symbolic decision, marking a transition between earthly and divine planes. Others argue it reflects the trial-and-error nature of early pyramid construction, where lessons learned in one structure were carried forward to the next. Yet when considering the combination of slope, internal chamber placement, and acoustic anomalies, the idea of purely practical reasoning seems incomplete. The pyramid's design appears to weave together utility, spirituality, and sensory experience into a single, cohesive yet enigmatic whole. It is this subtle intersection of mathematics, ritual, and mystery that captures the imagination of researchers and listeners alike. The bent pyramid also exemplifies the Egyptian understanding of space as a medium for influence, not merely as a backdrop for burial. Ancient builders seemed aware that human perception could be shaped by geometry, scale, and sound simultaneously. Moving through the pyramid, a person is guided both physically and emotionally, encountering tension and release, constriction and expansion, silence and resonance. Modern engineers marvel at how these effects emerge naturally from careful stone placement, yet the spiritual resonance suggests an awareness that transcends mere construction. The pyramid itself becomes an instrument, a voice echoing across millennia, whispering secrets that humans are only beginning to interpret. The subtle interplay of light and shadow within the internal corridors further amplifies the sense of mystery. Small windows and narrow passageways create dramatic contrasts. Bright patches of sunlight illuminate certain carvings or surfaces, while deep recesses remain cloaked in darkness. As visitors move through the space, their perception of scale and depth shifts, creating the illusion of movement in stone, a faint suggestion that the structure itself is alive. Combined with the acoustic properties, this architectural choreography demonstrates an astonishing command of sensory experience, designed to evoke reflection, awe, and perhaps a gentle unease. This phenomenon invites comparison with other ancient structures that blend function with the uncanny. The bent pyramid's subtle manipulation of sound and light parallels later examples in world architecture, from the resonant chambers of Malta's hypogeum to the hidden sound channels of certain Mesoamerican temples. Each of these sites demonstrates that ancient builders, across continents, recognize the power of sensory experience as a tool for ritual, control, or psychological impact. In this way, the bent pyramid occupies a unique intersection of science, spirituality, and mystery, bridging the known principles of physics with the human fascination for the unknown. As this section draws to a close, we prepare to leave the desert sands and enter another realm of mystery. From the soaring geometry and acoustic resonance of Egypt, the narrative transitions toward landscapes where human intention meets scale on the earth itself. The Nazca lines, etched across the Peruvian plains, embody a similar combination of mystery, precision, and psychological impact. Though here, the medium is land, not stone corridors, and the audience is the sky rather than those who move through narrow chambers. The bent pyramid, with its calculated angles and vibrating halls, becomes the perfect precursor, demonstrating how ancient civilizations subtly wove fear, awe, and wonder into the very structures they left behind. Stretching across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines remain one of the most enigmatic legacies of the ancient world. From the ground, the landscape appears deceptively ordinary, barren stretches of desert, cracked earth, and scattered rocks. Yet when viewed from above, massive geoglyphs emerge. Intricate lines, geometric shapes, and enormous figures of animals, plants, and other forms, so large that their full scale can only be appreciated from the sky. Among these figures are the lesser-known forbidden figures, strange, hybrid, or distorted forms that have sparked fascination and unease among researchers. Unlike the familiar hummingbirds or monkeys, these forbidden figures evoke ambiguity and tension, suggesting that the Nazca people engaged with forces or ideas that remain deeply hidden. The forbidden figures differ from the more iconic depictions in both form and tone. While hummingbirds, spiders, and whales convey elegance and harmony, these unusual shapes often combine human and animal traits or present exaggerated, unnatural proportions. Some figures appear almost monstrous, with elongated limbs, distorted heads, or appendages that defy natural anatomy. Others suggest abstract concepts, spirals, overlapping forms, or combinations of creatures that do not exist in the known ecosystem. Archaeologists have puzzled over these figures for decades, attempting to determine whether they represent mythological beings, warning symbols, or coded messages. The ambiguity itself is a central part of their power. They invite speculation while resisting any definitive interpretation. One particularly intriguing aspect of the Nazca lines is the method of their construction. The figures were created by removing the reddish, iron-rich topsoil to expose the lighter earth beneath, producing sharp, contrasting lines that have endured for over 1,000 years in a climate almost devoid of rainfall. Some of the forbidden figures span hundreds of feet, requiring meticulous planning and coordination, especially given the absence of aerial perspective for the creators. The precision of these designs suggests careful mathematical understanding, yet the choice of forms, distorted, hybrid, and sometimes unsettling, implies a symbolic or psychological intent beyond mere display. In this, the forbidden figures occupy a liminal space between practical creation and mystical expression. Researchers have proposed a variety of interpretations. One theory suggests that the forbidden figures represented beings feared or respected in Nazca cosmology, potentially spirits, deities, or ancestors. Their exaggerated or hybrid forms may have been meant to convey powers or qualities that humans could not fully understand. Another theory posits that they served ritualistic purposes aligned with water sources, agricultural cycles, or celestial events, as the Nazca appear to have been highly attuned to environmental and seasonal rhythms. In this interpretation, the figures were active participants in sacred ceremonies, their forms visible from vantage points that would have emphasized their scale and significance. A third, more speculative theory is that the forbidden figures encoded esoteric knowledge, serving as messages to select individuals capable of understanding their symbolism, or as communication with forces beyond human comprehension. The location of these figures also contributes to their mystery. Many lie in isolated stretches of desert, far from habitation or agricultural areas. Some are positioned near natural features, hills, ridges, or water sources, while others seem to float independently, as though marking a landscape in ways that defy practical explanation. This deliberate placement creates a subtle tension. The figures are at once integrated into their environment and disconnected from it, echoing a sense of otherworldly presence. Observers report that viewing forbidden figures can evoke a quiet unease, a recognition that these forms were intentionally designed to provoke attention, contemplation, or even subtle fear. The forbidden figures also challenge modern notions of intention and scale. Creating such massive designs without the benefit of aerial view requires extraordinary planning, including the use of grids, ropes, and sighting techniques. The precision is undeniable, yet the purpose remains elusive. This contrast between technical mastery and inscrutable meaning mirrors the tension in many ancient mysteries. We can measure, replicate, and analyze the methods, yet we remain unsure why they were undertaken. The Nazca lines, particularly the forbidden figures, underscore the idea that ancient civilizations often operated with sophisticated knowledge, yet for reasons intertwined with belief, symbolism, and possibly fear. Some of the most unsettling forbidden figures suggest hybrid entities, part human, part animal, or part something entirely alien. These forms invite reflection on what the Nazca may have feared, revered, or imagined. Were these representations of nightmares, protective spirits, or cosmic forces? Did the figures serve as warnings, talismans, or invitations for ritual observance? While evidence is scarce, the sheer scale and persistence of the figures indicate that they were of profound importance to the society that created them. Their continued survival in the desert, largely untouched by modern development, allows us to engage with the same visual impressions that the Nazca themselves may have experienced, bridging a temporal gap of a millennium or more. A key aspect of the forbidden figures is how they interact with human perception. Their forms are often ambiguous when viewed close up, appearing abstract or nonsensical. From a height, however, the intended shapes emerge, revealing coherence in what initially seems random. This duality, hidden versus revealed, incomprehensible versus recognizable, creates a subtle psychological tension. Observers are invited to oscillate between understanding and confusion, much like researchers attempting to decode the meaning behind the figures themselves. It is this balance of clarity and mystery that renders the forbidden figures so compelling and quietly unsettling. In addition, the forbidden figures exist in a dialogue with a broader set of Nazca lines. The harmonious depictions of animals and geometric shapes contrast sharply with the ambiguous and sometimes grotesque forms, highlighting the duality of ancient expression, known versus unknown, light versus shadow, familiar versus alien. This contrast reinforces the idea that the Nazca deliberately manipulated human perception, crafting a landscape that oscillates between comfort and unease. It is a subtle psychological design, merging art, landscape, and belief into a unified, though enigmatic, experience. As this section concludes, the transition toward subterranean mystery begins. From the vast desert and skybound geoglyphs, the narrative will move to the enclosed, echoing chambers beneath Malta, where human remains and carefully constructed spaces evoke another form of awe and unease. Just as the Nazca engaged with scale, perception, and symbolic meaning across an open landscape, the builders of the Maltese hypogeum shaped human experience within stone corridors, using sound, shadow, and form to evoke contemplation and subtle fear. The forbidden figures, in their aerial isolation and enigmatic presence, serve as a natural bridge toward mysteries that unfold underground, where human ingenuity and ritual intersect in equally profound ways. Beneath the sun-bleached streets of Malta lies a hidden labyrinth that whispers of civilizations long vanished. The Hal-Saflieni Hypogeum, an underground complex carved into soft limestone, offers a glimpse into a world where the living and the dead existed in close, deliberate proximity. Unlike open-air monuments or surface tombs, this hypogeum was designed as an enclosed sanctuary, its corridors and chambers echoing with subtle acoustic effects that amplify whispers and soft sounds. Walking through these subterranean halls, one cannot help but feel the weight of centuries pressing from every angle, a sensation that is both serene and subtly disquieting. Here, ancient rituals, human remains, and architectural ingenuity converge, creating a space that challenges our understanding of prehistoric life. The hypogeum dates back to around 4000 BCE, a period when Malta's inhabitants developed sophisticated burial practices and ceremonial spaces. Excavations have revealed multiple levels of interlinked chambers, staircases descending into darkness, and niches carved into walls to house the remains of the deceased. What is remarkable is the density of the human bones within the site. Thousands of skeletons were placed in careful order, suggesting a culture deeply concerned with the treatment of the dead. The precise organization, combined with the architectural planning required to create such a structure underground, indicates a society that understood both engineering and ritual in ways that remain astonishing to modern researchers. Among the hypogeum's most haunting features is the chamber known as the Oracle Room. This space is acoustically remarkable. A whisper spoken in one corner carries clearly across the entire room, amplified and reverberating in a way that seems almost supernatural. Scientists and visitors alike have reported that certain frequencies create sensations that feel like a vibration moving through the chest or skull. Such effects may have been intentional, a method of enhancing ritual experiences or connecting participants more directly with the spiritual realm. The design suggests that Malta's prehistoric builders possessed a nuanced understanding of sound, space, and human perception, blending practical knowledge with the mystical needs of their culture. The skeletal remains themselves present a different layer of mystery. Many skulls are elongated, a trait found in a limited number of ancient populations, sparking debate about whether this was natural, intentional through cranial shaping, or indicative of a distinct group. These unusual physical characteristics raise questions not only about population history, but also about the symbolic significance attributed to the deceased. Were elongated skulls revered as signs of spiritual importance, or were they simply common in this community? The deliberate arrangement of these remains within the hypogeum suggests that they were more than mere deposits. They were carefully curated, perhaps to convey meaning, maintain spiritual order, or facilitate ritual practices unknown to us today. Artifacts discovered within the chambers further enhance the aura of mystery. Pottery, figurines, and tools accompany the remains, but they are often simple, understated, and difficult to interpret. Some figurines depict human forms with exaggerated or abstract features, possibly representing deities, spirits, or symbolic concepts. Others are so minimal that their purpose remains speculative. These objects, combined with the architecture and the acoustic phenomena, create a multi-layered experience where every element, stone, bone, sound, participates in a deliberate ritual environment. It is as though the hypogeum itself is a living organism designed to elicit contemplation, awe, and a subtle sense of unease. Researchers are particularly fascinated by the spatial organization of the hypogeum. Different chambers appear to serve distinct purposes, some for storage of bones, some for ceremonial activity, and others possibly for meditation or observation. The descent from the surface into deeper levels may have been symbolic, representing a journey from the living world to the domain of the dead or the spiritual. The interplay of light and darkness, narrow corridors and expansive chambers, creates a psychological rhythm that mirrors the physical descent. In such an environment, participants would have been acutely aware of their own presence and mortality, a reminder of the fragile boundary between life and death. The density of human remains, combined with the architectural sophistication, has led some scholars to compare the hypogeum to a cathedral of the dead. Yet it is unlike any cathedral or tomb familiar in later historical periods. It is simultaneously communal and sacred, practical and mystical. The builders created an environment that respects the dead while also orchestrating experiences for the living, utilizing sound, space, and arrangement to guide emotional and psychological responses. The result is a profound, quiet intensity, a place where one can feel the persistence of human concern, devotion, and creativity across millennia. Another intriguing feature is the way the hypogeum interacts with natural phenomena. The soft limestone walls, shaped to precise angles and curves, not only amplify sound, but also respond subtly to temperature and moisture. The environment would have felt cool, damp, and enclosed, a sensory experience quite unlike the bright, open world above. The effect is immersive. Visitors can feel both the physical presence of the stones and the implied presence of countless ancestors. This combination of physical sensation and psychological impact exemplifies the prehistoric understanding of architecture as a medium for human experience, a principle still relevant in modern design, yet applied here with an intensity born of ritual and belief. The Malta hypogeum also raises questions about the relationship between fear, reverence, and the unknown. Walking through the corridors, one senses a deliberate cultivation of emotion, curiosity, awe, subtle unease, and introspection. The builders seem to understand that spaces could evoke feelings as powerfully as artifacts or symbols. The combination of human remains, ceremonial objects, and acoustic resonance creates an environment where the living are constantly reminded of mortality, spirituality, and the mysteries that lie beyond the tangible. It is this careful orchestration that continues to fascinate researchers and visitors, revealing a culture deeply attuned to the psychological dimensions of ritual and memory. As this section draws to a close, the narrative begins to shift toward another type of enigmatic physical imprint, those left in the natural world itself. Just as the Malta hypogeum harnessed architecture, sound, and human remains to evoke mystery and reverence, other ancient sites across the globe leave marks on the earth that suggest stories, rituals, and perhaps beings that we cannot fully comprehend. The journey moves from the subterranean echoes of Malta to the wide expanses of South Africa, where enormous footprints preserved in stone hint at beings whose scale challenges imagination and invites questions that remain unanswered. The catacombs, with their whispering chambers and sacred bones, serve as a bridge, reminding us that human ingenuity and the impulse to confront mystery manifest in both hidden and visible ways across the ancient world. Across the rolling landscapes and ancient stone formations of South Africa, one encounters impressions so vast that they challenge both the imagination and conventional understanding of human history. These enormous footprints, preserved in hardened rock, appear at first glance to be a natural anomaly. Yet their shapes are uncannily humanoid, complete with toes, arches, and heel marks. Some span more than a meter in length, dwarfing any modern human foot, while others cluster in sequences that suggest deliberate movement across the terrain. For researchers, these footprints are both fascinating and unsettling, existing at the intersection of geology, archaeology, and myth. They provoke questions that refuse easy answers, drawing us into a narrative where fact and speculation coexist in quiet tension. The discovery of these giant footprints dates back to the 19th century, when early explorers and colonial surveyors first documented them in sandstone formations. Initial scientific interpretations were cautious. Many suggested they were the result of natural erosion, sediment distortion, or ancient mud flows that coincidentally formed shapes resembling feet. However, detailed measurements revealed patterns inconsistent with random geological processes. The impressions display consistent proportions, sequential spacing, and alignment in ways that mimic deliberate walking. These observations have prompted a small but persistent community of researchers to consider alternative explanations, ranging from forgotten human populations to symbolic or ritualistic carvings now obscured by time. One of the most striking aspects of these footprints is the psychological response they evoke. Despite the possibility of geological formation, there is a primal recognition in the human mind when confronted with shapes resembling our own anatomy, especially on such an exaggerated scale. Witnesses often report a sense of awe mixed with subtle unease, as though the land itself is whispering secrets of a past populated by beings far larger than ordinary humans. This emotional response mirrors similar effects in other ancient sites. Just as the Aztec death whistles and the Malta hypogeum manipulate perception and emotion, the giant footprints elicit wonder and discomfort simultaneously, blurring the line between observation and intuition. Researchers have debated the potential origins of these footprints in multiple contexts. One theory suggests that they could represent a now extinct population of unusually large hominins, a species or subspecies whose remains have yet to be discovered. Another posits that the prints were intentionally carved by ancient humans for ritualistic purposes, perhaps to honor deities, commemorate mythic ancestors, or mark sacred paths across the land. The third, more skeptical explanation maintains that the prints are the product of geological processes, with erosion and sedimentary flow creating shapes that coincidentally resemble feet. Each hypothesis carries its own tension. Either humans once shared the land with giants, or natural forces produced a striking illusion, or ancient people deliberately created evidence of beings whose existence remains enigmatic. Adding to the mystery, some of the footprints appear in sequences that suggest movement in ways that are both practical and symbolic. A series of impressions may curve along a cliffside, traverse riverbeds, or lead to natural formations that would have held ritual significance. The alignment and orientation of these sequences imply intent. Even if the prints were symbolic rather than literal, they encode a story of journey, presence, or passage. In this way, the giant footprints operate on multiple levels, merging physicality with narrative, reality with imagination. Their scale amplifies their impact, creating a tangible connection to the unknown that mere artifacts or small objects cannot achieve. The footprints also intersect with regional myths and oral traditions. Local legends speak of giant beings who once walked the earth, often associated with creation, guardianship, or cosmic events. Some traditions describe these figures as protectors, others as destructive forces whose movements shaped rivers, hills, and valleys. While folklore is not evidence, it demonstrates how ancient peoples may have interpreted extraordinary features in the landscape, embedding them with narrative and moral significance. The impressions in stone, therefore, function not only as potential historical records, but also as catalysts for human imagination, blending observation with storytelling in ways that endure across generations. Modern technology has added new layers of analysis. Ground-penetrating radar, 3D scanning, and drone imaging have allowed researchers to study the footprint's depth, spacing, and orientation with unprecedented precision. These techniques confirm that the impressions are not merely superficial. They extend into the rock, sometimes in ways that suggest gradual, weight-bearing motion. This has intensified debates about their origins, highlighting the tension between natural formation and deliberate creation. The footprints remain stubbornly ambiguous, forcing scholars to confront the limits of interpretation and the possibility that some ancient marks resist categorization entirely. The scale of these footprints creates a striking contrast with the human body, producing an immediate sense of the sublime. Standing next to a meter-long impression, one feels physically dwarfed, emotionally small, and acutely aware of the unknown forces, whether human, mythic, or geological, that shaped it. This reaction is amplified by the surrounding environment. Remote plains, quiet valleys, and dramatic rock formations create a sense of isolation and timelessness. The land itself becomes a participant in the mystery, its contours and textures emphasizing the enormity of what is represented. The psychological effect mirrors the awe elicited by other ancient constructions. Vast monuments, megalithic structures, and subterranean chambers all operate on a scale that exceeds ordinary human experience. As we examine these footprints, the narrative begins to shift toward another form of enigmatic creation. Beings imagined or revered in human culture, often with exaggerated or otherworldly features. In Japan, the Jaman people sculpted figurines with large eyes and distorted bodies, creating objects that evoke curiosity, wonder, and a subtle unease. Just as the footprints suggest beings larger than life in the natural world, the Jaman figurines suggest beings larger than life in the imagination and ritual of human culture. Both phenomena explore the boundary between the known and the unknown, blending physicality, perception, and belief. The footprints of South Africa thus serve as a bridge between tangible, geologically anchored mystery and the symbolic, human-created representations that follow, highlighting the persistent human fascination with scale, the uncanny, and the unseen. Along the rugged coastlines of ancient Japan, over 5,000 years ago, the Jaman people flourished, leaving behind a remarkable legacy of pottery, tools, and figurines whose significance continues to puzzle and intrigue researchers. Among these artifacts, the so-called dogu figurines stand out for their unusual shapes, exaggerated features, and enigmatic expressions. Unlike simple representations of daily life, many of these figures appear almost otherworldly. Large, staring eyes, contorted bodies, and appendages that suggest forms beyond the natural world. Some figurines seem to represent humans, others animals, and yet others something entirely hybrid or alien. Scholars have long debated their purpose, considering ritualistic, symbolic, or even shamanic functions. What is undeniable, however, is the effect these objects have on those who study them. A subtle sense of awe, curiosity, and an almost intangible unease, as if they carry the echoes of ancient belief directly into the present. The dogu are often small, yet their presence is commanding. Many are hollow, possibly designed to hold offerings or serve as conduits for spiritual energy. The enlarged eyes are perhaps the most striking feature, giving the figurines a constant, watchful gaze that seems to penetrate the observer. Some researchers suggest these eyes symbolize perception beyond the ordinary, a spiritual vision or connection to unseen forces. Others propose that the figures served as protective talismans, embodying deities, spirits, or mythic creatures that safeguarded the community from illness, misfortune, or malevolent forces. The ambiguity of their function amplifies the sense of mystery. We can measure, catalog, and analyze them, yet the full meaning remains locked behind the veil of time and culture. A particularly fascinating aspect of the dogu is their emphasis on bodily exaggeration and distortion. Limbs may be elongated, torsos compressed, or features enlarged in ways that challenge natural anatomy. Some figures display elements that evoke aquatic creatures, gilled faces, fins, or body shapes suggesting fluid motion, hinting at a symbolic or mythic connection to water and the deep sea. The coastal environment of Japan, with its abundant marine life and frequent storms, may have inspired these forms, yet the precision and consistency in their design indicate intentionality far beyond mere imitation. These distortions create a quiet, psychological tension in the observer, blending the familiar and the alien in a way that is both intriguing and subtly unsettling. Researchers have proposed multiple interpretations of the dogu. One theory suggests that they functioned as ritual objects in ceremonies designed to communicate with spiritual forces or to influence the physical world. For example, a figurine might have been used to transfer illness or misfortune from a person to the object, which was then ritually sent away or buried. Another perspective considers the figures as symbolic representations of mythic beings or deities, particularly those associated with the sea, fertility, or protection. Some dogu show clear sexual characteristics, suggesting connections to fertility rituals, while others emphasize eyes, posture, or adornment, highlighting the spiritual rather than corporeal significance. The combination of ritual, symbolic, and artistic elements creates a multi-layered experience, where meaning is simultaneously encoded, hidden, and revealed. The emotional impact of the dogu is enhanced by their intricate craftsmanship. Despite being created with relatively simple tools, the figures display remarkable precision in proportion, texture, and detail. Grooves, incisions, and patterns often cover their surfaces, suggesting clothing, tattoos, or ceremonial decoration. Even when fragments survive, the intention behind each line, curve, and indentation is evident. Handling or observing a dogu can evoke a sense of intimacy with a long-gone culture, a momentary connection that spans millennia. Yet the very precision and attention to detail, combined with the grotesque or otherworldly features, also produce a subtle tension, admiration mixed with a quiet, almost imperceptible disquiet. The Jaman people may have used these figurines in ways that integrated sound, space, or ritual performance. Archaeologists have noted that some dogu are found in context with hearths, ceremonial pits, or layered deposits, suggesting they were active participants in cultural and religious life. When placed in specific arrangements, these figurines could have functioned as focal points for group rituals, meditation, or spiritual communication. The hollow structures of some dogu might have allowed sound to resonate, subtly amplifying human voices or ritual noises, creating an immersive experience not unlike the acoustic chambers of Malta's hypogeum. In this way, the dogu are both object and environment, bridging the tangible and intangible in a manner that continues to captivate researchers. Another striking element of the dogu is their apparent engagement with imagination and narrative. Many figures combine human, animal, and abstract traits, blurring the lines between the known world and mythic or spiritual realms. The exaggerated eyes, aquatic features, and hybrid forms suggest that the Jaman were envisioning entities that inhabited a domain beyond ordinary perception, a realm of spirits, deep-sea gods, or cosmic forces. This duality between reality and imagination is central to their enduring fascination. Like the giant footprints of South Africa, the dogu prompt viewers to consider the possibility of beings beyond ordinary human experience, whether real, symbolic, or somewhere in between. The figurines also reflect a profound understanding of human psychology. By exaggerating features and combining familiar and unfamiliar elements, the dogu capture attention, evoke curiosity, and subtly unsettle. They are not designed to terrify overtly, but to provoke reflection and emotional engagement. The Jaman people seem to have understood that perception itself could be guided, shaped, and manipulated through form. The psychological resonance of the dogu is thus as important as their ritual, symbolic, or artistic function, reminding us that ancient cultures were attuned to the emotional impact of their creations in ways that remain surprisingly sophisticated. As this section closes, the narrative shifts from tangible objects to the written and symbolic, moving towards civilizations that attempted to capture meaning in scripts and signs. Just as the Dogu communicate in abstract, hybrid forms, the Indus Valley script presents symbols whose meaning remains largely undeciphered, challenging researchers to decode an entire civilization's worldview from a sequence of enigmatic marks. The transition emphasizes continuity in human engagement with mystery, from figurines embodying the imagination and spiritual realm to writing that hints at knowledge and thought lost to time, yet preserved in subtle forms that continue to intrigue and unsettle. The Jaman Dogu thus prepare the listener for a journey into the complex and unsolved language of the Indus Valley. Along the fertile plains of the Indus River, one of the world's earliest urban civilizations flourished over 4,000 years ago, leaving behind cities such as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, remarkable for their grid layouts, sophisticated drainage systems, and carefully planned public spaces. Yet for all the tangible engineering and architectural marvels, the most perplexing legacy of the Indus Valley civilization is its script, a system of symbols etched onto seals, tablets, and pottery that continues to defy understanding. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which have largely been deciphered through comparative analysis, the Indus script remains an enigma, a language frozen in time, silently guarding the thoughts and intentions of its creators. In this section, we explore the mystery, the implications, and the subtle unease that arises when an entire civilization's voice remains just out of reach. The inscriptions are often brief, usually comprising 5 to 10 symbols arranged in neat sequences. The symbols themselves are diverse: human figures, animals, abstract geometric forms, and combinations that appear almost fantastical. Some seals depict creatures that seem mythical, blending features of real and imagined animals, while others are purely abstract, suggesting that the system encoded concepts as well as phonetic sounds. Researchers have cataloged over 400 distinct symbols, yet attempts to assign consistent phonetic or semantic value have largely failed. The brevity and irregularity of the inscriptions complicate efforts further, raising the possibility that the symbols functioned more like symbolic markers than conventional writing, or that they encoded multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Indus script is the context in which it appears. Seals, small and portable, may have been used for trade, identification, or ritual purposes. Inscriptions on pottery or other artifacts suggest domestic and ceremonial uses, yet their precise meaning remains elusive. Unlike other ancient scripts, there are no bilingual texts or Rosetta Stone equivalents to guide interpretation. The lack of a known descendant language, combined with the disappearance of the civilization itself, leaves researchers in the dark, attempting to reconstruct intent and meaning from fragmentary evidence. Each discovery provokes both excitement and frustration, a tantalizing glimpse into a sophisticated culture that is simultaneously familiar and unknowable. The psychological impact of the undeciphered script is subtle but profound. There is a tension in realizing that humans from a highly advanced civilization walked the same earth, made decisions, communicated, and yet left behind symbols that our minds cannot yet translate. The signs themselves evoke a faint unease, lines, dots, and shapes that might convey practical information, spiritual concepts, or social organization, yet remain locked, resistant to modern comprehension. In encountering the script, we are reminded of our limitations and the vast temporal gap between the known and unknown. It is a quiet, intellectual eeriness, distinct from physical fear, but equally compelling, as if the voices of the past are whispering just beyond perception. Researchers have proposed numerous theories to explain the script. Some suggest it represents a full-fledged written language, potentially a Proto-Dravidian tongue, encoding both phonetic and semantic information. Others argue it may have been a complex system of symbols for trade, property, or social hierarchy, designed to convey meaning in a standardized yet abstract manner. Another theory posits ritual or spiritual significance, in which the symbols serve as talismans, invocations, or expressions of cosmological ideas. Each hypothesis is supported by fragments of evidence, but undermined by the absence of definitive proof. This ambiguity heightens the mystery. We can see the structure, recognize repetition, and identify patterns, yet we cannot confidently say what the signs truly signify. The aesthetic quality of the script also contributes to its enduring fascination. The symbols are precise, carefully executed, and often intricately detailed. Animals are stylized, human figures reduced to essential forms, geometric shapes elegant in their symmetry. The attention to form suggests not only practical intent, but also artistic sensibility, a deliberate crafting of visual language that transcends mere communication. There's a tension here as well. Symbols that appear orderly and elegant simultaneously evoke a sense of incomprehensibility. The beauty and the opacity of the signs create a subtle emotional resonance, blending admiration with unease, a hallmark of the ancient mysteries that recur throughout human history. Another compelling aspect of the Indus script is its potential integration with the civilization's urban planning and societal organization. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro exhibit remarkable standardization in measurements, weights, and city layout, suggesting a highly organized society with administrative sophistication. It is plausible, then, that the script encoded essential elements of governance, commerce, or ritual practice, yet the inability to read it means we cannot fully understand the civilization's complexity. The tension between tangible, understandable structures and the inscrutable written symbols mirrors the broader theme of known versus unknown, a recurring motif in the ancient mysteries explored in this documentary. Even in the presence of immense human achievement, there remain aspects that resist comprehension, reminding us of the limits of our knowledge. The geographic spread of the script adds further layers to its intrigue. Symbols appear consistently across hundreds of miles, indicating widespread cultural integration and communication. Yet regional variations suggest localized practices, adaptations, or interpretations, complicating the possibility of a universal reading. This tension between uniformity and variation mirrors the broader challenge of interpreting ancient societies. Humans operate within shared frameworks, but individual, local, or symbolic deviations often leave traces that defy easy categorization. The Indus script embodies this tension, a tangible reminder of both the reach and the elusiveness of human intention. Finally, the undeciphered nature of the Indus script invites reflection on the continuity of human curiosity. Every attempt to understand the signs connects us with the civilization that created them, bridging thousands of years in an effort to reconstruct thought, intention, and meaning. Yet the persistent failure to fully decode the symbols reinforces a sense of mystery, a quiet, intellectual eeriness that resonates with the listener. The script is not threatening, but it is haunting in its silence, a voice frozen in time, reminding us that even the most advanced societies leave gaps, enigmas, and secrets that challenge our understanding. As this section closes, the focus begins to shift from symbols of communication to structures imbued with meaning, energy, and potentially otherworldly significance. Just as the Indus script offers tantalizing glimpses of human thought and ritual, other ancient creations, such as the megalithic structures of Europe or the aligned stones of Britain, speak in forms that transcend language. The undeciphered script of the Indus Valley serves as a bridge between cognitive mystery and physical mystery, preparing the listener to explore sites where stone, alignment, and cosmic observation intertwine, and where the boundary between human knowledge and the unknown continues to inspire awe. Across the windswept plains of southern England, Stonehenge rises as a silent testament to human ingenuity, mystery, and ritual. This megalithic circle, composed of massive sarsen stones and smaller blue stones, has fascinated scholars, travelers, and mystics for centuries. While popular imagination often depicts it as a simple monument or a ceremonial gathering site, modern research reveals layers of sophistication that continue to challenge understanding. Among the most intriguing aspects are its astronomical alignments. The careful positioning of stones to interact with the movements of the sun, moon, and possibly stars. These alignments hint at a civilization profoundly aware of celestial patterns and capable of integrating this knowledge into monumental architecture, blending science, spirituality, and psychological impact in a way that remains enigmatic to this day. The most famous of Stonehenge's alignments is its relationship with the summer solstice. On the longest day of the year, the rising sun appears directly over the heel stone, casting light into the heart of the stone circle in a precise and dramatic display. Similarly, during the winter solstice, the setting sun aligns with other stones, creating a complementary pattern of light and shadow. These alignments are not accidental. Careful measurements confirm the consistency and intentionality of the layout. Ancient builders demonstrated not only an understanding of solar cycles, but also the ability to plan, transport, and erect massive stones in ways that preserve these relationships over centuries, despite geological and environmental changes. The precision is remarkable, suggesting that Stonehenge functioned both as a calendar and as a sacred space for observing and ritualizing the passage of time. Beyond the solstices, evidence suggests additional astronomical considerations. Some researchers have proposed that Stonehenge's layout corresponds to lunar cycles, marking the positions of the moon during its major and minor standstills. Others have identified potential alignments with specific stars or constellations visible in the prehistoric sky. These observations raise intriguing questions. Were the builders attempting to track time, predict seasons, or communicate cosmological knowledge? Or did the celestial alignments hold deeper symbolic or spiritual significance, connecting human activity to the cosmos? Whatever the precise purpose, the interplay between stone and sky creates a profound sense of awe, a deliberate manipulation of perception that invites contemplation, wonder, and subtle unease. The scale and construction of Stonehenge further amplify its impact. Some of the sarsen stones weigh over 20 tons, while the smaller blue stones, transported from Wales, traveled over 150 miles. Moving, shaping, and erecting these stones required an extraordinary level of organization, technical skill, and knowledge of leverage, geometry, and collective labor. The monument's circular form, concentric arrangements, and precise gaps suggest intentional design rather than random placement. Every stone, pathway, and void contributes to the overall effect, creating a space that is both physically imposing and psychologically resonant. Visitors report a palpable sense of presence, as though the stones themselves hold memory, power, or consciousness, a subtle reminder of the intersection between human effort, natural forces, and spiritual intention. Stonehenge's acoustic properties add another layer of complexity. Experiments with sound within the circle reveal that certain frequencies resonate between stones, amplifying human voices and producing vibrations that can be felt in the chest. Although it is impossible to know whether the builders intentionally exploited these properties, the effect would have complemented the visual and astronomical phenomena, creating a multisensory experience that engaged sight, sound, and body. Rituals performed in this environment would have been immersive, manipulating human perception to evoke awe, reverence, and a subtle sense of the otherworldly. In this way, Stonehenge functions as both monument and instrument, blending architecture, acoustics, and astronomy into a cohesive experience of wonder and mystery. The placement of Stonehenge within the broader landscape also speaks to its significance. Nearby avenues, barrows, and ancillary sites suggest a complex ritual network connecting the monument to water sources, burial grounds, and ceremonial pathways. These relationships imply that Stonehenge was not an isolated artifact, but part of a sophisticated cultural and spiritual ecosystem. The broader context emphasizes a deliberate orchestration of human experience across space. Approach, observation, participation, and reflection were all likely considered in the design. Visitors moving through this environment would have experienced a rhythm of anticipation, revelation, and awe, a carefully cultivated engagement with both the physical and celestial worlds. Psychologically, the monument embodies the tension between familiarity and the unknown. The stones themselves are recognizably human in scale, large yet navigable, while their arrangement, weight, and alignment push perception toward the extraordinary. Observers cannot ignore the effort required to create such a space, nor the precision with which it interacts with the cosmos. The combination of human ingenuity and inexplicable purpose fosters subtle unease, a recognition that the builders possessed knowledge, skill, and intent that is difficult to fully comprehend. This mirrors the emotional effect seen in other ancient mysteries, from Malta's hypogeum to the Nazca lines, where perception is carefully guided to evoke awe and curiosity. In addition, the layers of time embedded in Stonehenge contribute to its enigmatic aura. Over millennia, the site has been altered, rebuilt, and repurposed, adding stratified complexity to its interpretation. Each generation left traces of intention, belief, or ceremony, creating a palimpsest of human engagement. Archaeologists excavating the surrounding landscape uncover tools, pottery, and burials that provide glimpses into prehistoric life. Yet the full meaning of the monument itself remains tantalizingly beyond reach. The interaction of temporal layers enhances the psychological resonance, reminding observers that mystery is not merely static. It accumulates, deepens, and persists through centuries of human interaction. Stonehenge also reflects a sophisticated understanding of symbolic duality. Light and shadow, mass and void, proximity and distance all contribute to its effect. The interplay of these elements is subtle yet deliberate. It emphasizes the passage of time, the cycle of seasons, and the connection between humans and the cosmos. The monument's ability to evoke both comprehension and mystery simultaneously is a hallmark of ancient ingenuity. It is designed to be measured, studied, and understood, yet retains an aura of secrecy and wonder that resists complete rationalization. As this section concludes, the narrative begins to prepare the listener for a transition from monumental alignment to hidden mathematical and ritual precision in human history. Just as Stonehenge demonstrates deliberate manipulation of perception, time, and space, other ancient creations, such as the precision-engineered temples of Teotihuacan or the astronomical observatories of Chichen Itza, illustrate humanity's enduring fascination with the cosmos and the unknown. Stonehenge, in its silent grandeur, bridges the physical and the celestial, the measurable and the mysterious, guiding us toward a deeper understanding of how ancient civilizations wove awe, knowledge, and subtle fear into their most enduring creations. Beyond the modern bustle of Mexico City lies Teotihuacan, one of the most enigmatic and expansive ancient cities in the Americas. Constructed over 2,000 years ago, it was once home to tens of thousands of people, boasting massive pyramids, long avenues, and intricate urban planning that rivals the complexity of contemporary civilizations elsewhere. Yet beneath its surface lies a network of tunnels and chambers that have long puzzled archaeologists and visitors alike. These hidden spaces, often deliberately sealed, exude an air of mystery and unease, suggesting purposes that blend ritual, secrecy, and perhaps encounters with forces beyond ordinary human comprehension. In this section, we descend into the underworld of Teotihuacan, exploring the psychological, spiritual, and architectural dimensions of these subterranean spaces. The tunnels of Teotihuacan are most famously associated with the Pyramid of the Sun excavations in the late 20th century revealed a hidden tunnel beneath the pyramid, stretching for hundreds of meters and leading to a small chamber whose original contents remain largely mysterious. Archaeologists discovered artifacts such as obsidian blades, ceramic vessels, and stone figurines, carefully arranged in ways that suggest ceremonial intent rather than mere storage. Some artifacts were intentionally broken, others were placed in symmetrical patterns, hinting at symbolic meaning. The deliberate sealing of these tunnels suggests that they were spaces of immense significance, potentially reserved for ritual specialists, elite members of society, or spiritual practitioners. Walking through these tunnels, modern researchers report an almost tangible sense of solemnity and anticipation, as if the walls themselves retain echoes of ancient practice. One of the most fascinating aspects of Teotihuacan's tunnels is their acoustic properties. Similar to the Malta hypogeum or the bent pyramid, certain areas amplify whispers or vibrations, creating sensations that are both auditory and physical. Low-frequency sounds resonate through the narrow corridors, while the stone's surfaces distort and carry higher tones. These effects may have been employed intentionally during ritual, enhancing chants, prayers, or incantations, and fostering a sense of connection with unseen forces. The interplay between space and sound demonstrates an advanced understanding of human perception, blending architecture and psychology to create environments that evoke awe, reverence, and subtle fear. The placement of objects within the tunnels further deepens the mystery. Some chambers contain figurines resembling jaguars, birds, or hybrid creatures, suggesting symbolic representation of deities, protective spirits, or mythic forces. Other chambers house mineral deposits, such as obsidian or pyrite, whose reflective or glittering surfaces may have been used to enhance visual effects during ceremonies. Scholars theorize that the tunnels functioned as liminal spaces, bridging the ordinary world with the spiritual or supernatural realms. Moving through them would have been an immersive experience, guiding participants through darkness, constriction, and silence toward moments of revelation, symbolic insight, or connection with divine forces. Sealed passages in Teotihuacan also point to the intentional preservation of mystery. In many cases, archaeologists have found evidence that tunnels were filled with debris or blocked with stones shortly after construction, perhaps to prevent access or to contain the power of the spaces within. This act of deliberate closure mirrors practices seen in other ancient civilizations. Mesopotamian burial chambers, Egyptian tombs, and Maltese hypogea all demonstrate a desire to protect, conceal, or control sacred energy. In Teotihuacan, the sealed tunnels preserve both material artifacts and intangible experience, maintaining the tension between knowledge and the unknown across centuries. The psychological impact of these subterranean chambers is heightened by their design. The tunnels are often narrow, low-ceilinged, and dark, creating a sense of physical vulnerability. The journey from open courtyards into these enclosed spaces mirrors a descent into an underworld, symbolically separating participants from the ordinary realm. Small alcoves, sharp turns, and sudden expansions in space create moments of anticipation and revelation, guiding perception in ways that are both deliberate and profound. This careful orchestration of movement, light, and sound demonstrates the builder's sophisticated understanding of human cognition, ritual psychology, and the creation of awe. The tunnels also provide insight into Teotihuacan's complex belief system. Many artifacts suggest a strong connection with cosmology, fertility, and the duality of life and death. For example, jaguar figurines often symbolize power and transformation, while bird imagery may represent the connection between earth and sky. Obsidian, valued both for its sharpness and spiritual significance, likely played a role in ceremonial offerings or ritual enactments. Each element within the tunnels reinforces the duality of fear and reverence. Objects are simultaneously familiar and uncanny, crafted to engage the senses and imagination, and to evoke contemplation of forces beyond ordinary understanding. Some researchers speculate that the tunnels may have also served as venues for initiatory rites. Individuals or select groups may have entered these spaces to undergo ritual experiences designed to symbolize death, rebirth, or communion with spiritual entities. The controlled darkness, confined space, amplified sound, and symbolic artifact create an environment that encourages introspection, heightened awareness, and psychological transformation. The tunnels thus function not only as storage or ceremonial chambers, but as deliberate instruments for shaping human experience, integrating perception, emotion, and spiritual practice in ways that remain largely mysterious to this day. Another remarkable aspect is the alignment of tunnels with surface structures and celestial markers. Some passages appear to correspond with solar or lunar cycles, echoing themes seen in Stonehenge and other ancient observatories. This integration of underground and above-ground architecture underscores a sophisticated worldview in which physical space, celestial observation, and ritual practice are intimately linked. Participants would have experienced a continuum of sacred space, moving from the open air of plazas to the shadowed interior of tunnels, guided by both visual and auditory cues, in a manner that reinforced the civilization's cosmological understanding. As this section concludes, the story of Teotihuacan's tunnels serves as a bridge to another realm of hidden mystery, the enigmatic stone spheres of Costa Rica. Just as the tunnels channel human experience, sound, and ritual in confined spaces, the stone spheres engage with landscape, scale, and perception, leaving observers questioning intention, origin, and meaning. The exploration of Teotihuacan reminds us that ancient civilizations were acutely aware of the psychological, spiritual, and symbolic power of space, and that their most enduring mysteries often lie concealed beneath the surface, waiting for those who dare to venture into darkness and contemplation. Scattered across the lush valleys and rolling hills of Costa Rica, the stone spheres present one of the most enigmatic legacies of the pre-Columbian era. Known locally as Las Bolas, these perfectly round stones vary in size from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter, some weighing several tons. Their smooth surfaces and near-perfect spherical shapes have puzzled researchers since their discovery in the 20th century, raising questions about their creators, purpose, and the astonishing techniques required to craft them. Unlike the dogu of Japan or the footprints of South Africa, these spheres are not associated with obvious symbolic figures or narratives. Instead, they evoke mystery through geometry, precision, and placement, silently challenging modern assumptions about ancient capability. The spheres are distributed across various sites, often in clusters, aligned along rivers, hilltops, and terraces. Some appear to form linear arrangements or geometric patterns, while others are isolated, positioned as if deliberately marking the landscape. Archaeologists suggest that their placement may have had social, ceremonial, or astronomical significance. Certain alignments correspond with natural features, such as watercourses or horizon lines, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of spatial relationships and environmental awareness. This subtle manipulation of terrain, combined with the extraordinary craftsmanship of the spheres, suggests intentionality and purpose rather than random placement or natural formation. The craftsmanship of the spheres is itself astonishing. Most are composed of gabbro, limestone, or granodiorite, materials requiring significant effort to shape without the use of modern tools. Researchers have theorized that the creators used hammering and pecking techniques, perhaps combined with abrasion using sand or other abrasive materials, to achieve the remarkable smoothness and near-perfect roundness. Achieving such precision would have required not only technical skill, but also extensive planning, measurement, and patience, an undertaking that reflects a profound understanding of geometry and material properties. The spheres are thus at once artistic, technological, and enigmatic, blending human ingenuity with a sense of deliberate mystery. Equally fascinating is the psychological impact of the spheres when encountered in their original context. Walking among clusters of perfectly round stones, one experiences a sense of harmony disrupted by the surreal perfection of forms. The mind struggles to reconcile the organic, irregular landscape with the mechanical precision of the spheres, producing a subtle tension between familiarity and the uncanny. Some spheres are small enough to be held, others massive enough to dwarf the observer, creating a dynamic sense of scale that can inspire both wonder and disquiet. It is a quiet, meditative awe a confrontation with human intention and technical mastery that leaves no immediate answers, only questions. Scholars have proposed a range of hypotheses regarding their function. One suggests that the spheres served as markers of territorial or social boundaries, signaling the presence or authority of a community. Another theory posits astronomical or calendrical purposes, with certain spheres aligned to track solstices, equinoxes, or celestial bodies. A third interpretation suggests ceremonial use, in which the spheres acted as focal points in ritual or spiritual practices, perhaps representing celestial bodies, deities, or abstract cosmological concepts. Regardless of function, the spheres share a common theme. They embody intention, precision, and mystery, leaving only traces of meaning behind, a silent dialogue across time. The sphere's relationship with the landscape amplifies their enigmatic quality. In some locations, they're positioned to create sight lines toward mountain ridges, river bends, or horizon features, suggesting that the ancients were acutely aware of spatial perception. Approaching these stones, an observer moves through a curated environment, guided by placement and scale, and invited to reflect on human presence, natural forces, and perhaps unseen powers. The spheres do not overtly communicate, yet their form and distribution imply thoughtfulness, deliberation, and a desire to manipulate perception, a theme consistent across many ancient mysteries we have explored, from the acoustic corridors of Malta to the aerial geoglyphs of Nazca. Modern investigation of the spheres also highlights the ongoing mystery of their creation and purpose. Many stones were moved from quarry sites several kilometers away, suggesting organized labor and social coordination. The logistical challenge of transporting and shaping multi-ton stones without the wheel underscores the sophistication of the societies responsible. At the same time, the absence of written records or direct oral tradition leaves their precise meaning inaccessible, creating an aura of unresolved curiosity. These gaps in knowledge are precisely what sustain the sphere's mystique, bridging the tangible and the unknown, the human and the seemingly supernatural. The spheres also invite contemplation of universal themes in human engagement with mystery. Across cultures, humans have created objects that combine scale, precision, and ambiguity to evoke wonder. The Doga figurines, Indus Valley script, and Stonehenge's alignments all serve similar psychological functions. The spheres do not speak, yet they evoke the same questions about intention, capability, and meaning. Observers confront their own assumptions. How did these people achieve such precision? Why invest so much effort in objects that carry no explicit narrative? The interplay between mastery and enigma is central to the sphere's allure, drawing modern audiences into the same psychological space inhabited by their creators. Another compelling aspect of the spheres is their capacity to evoke reflection on temporality and endurance. The stones have survived centuries of environmental exposure, human settlement, and natural erosion, preserving both form and placement with remarkable fidelity. Their endurance speaks to the durability of human intention and the persistence of mystery across time. Standing among the spheres, one is acutely aware of temporal distance, the hands that shaped them, the culture that placed them, and the centuries that have passed. This temporal resonance adds to the subtle eeriness, a quiet reminder that some legacies are meant to endure as questions rather than answers. As this section closes, the narrative prepares to transition from tangible, human-crafted forms to natural phenomena that blur the line between human intervention and the inexplicable. Just as the stone's spheres manipulate perception, scale, and placement, the naturally occurring yet unusual formations of places like the Devil's Kettle in the United States invite similar awe and mystery. The Costa Rican spheres stand as a testament to human ingenuity and the subtle orchestration of the environment, bridging curiosity, reverence, and psychological impact. Their silent perfection encourages the mind to wander, question, and imagine, setting the stage for exploration of mysteries where nature and perception intertwine, leaving researchers and observers alike with a sense of awe that quietly unsettles. In the dense forests of Minnesota, along the winding Brule River, lies one of nature's most perplexing spectacles, the Devil's Kettle. At first glance, it appears as a simple waterfall where the river splits around a rocky outcrop, but its allure and mystery lie in what happens to the water that plunges into one of the twin chutes. Unlike the flowing cascade on the opposite side, the water that enters the kettle disappears seemingly without a trace, vanishing into a deep, churning hole whose depth and internal passageways remain largely unexplored. Despite modern attempts to measure, track, or trace the water, the phenomenon continues to defy complete explanation. Scientists, adventurers, and tourists alike are drawn to the site, experiencing both awe and subtle unease at the silent, swallowing void. The geological formation of the Devil's Kettle suggests a combination of erosion, rock composition, and ancient river flow patterns. The hole itself is carved into volcanic rock, with water spiraling and churning as it descends. Early hypotheses suggested that the water might reappear underground, feeding subterranean rivers or springs, yet dye tests conducted in the 20th and 21st centuries produced inconclusive results for decades, deepening the mystery. The apparent disappearance challenges common experience and expectation. Water, a familiar substance, is suddenly untraceable, leaving observers with a subtle cognitive dissonance between what they know and what they perceive. This contrast between the ordinary and the inexplicable forms the core of the site's eerie fascination. The Devil's Kettle evokes not only geological curiosity, but also psychological tension. Standing at the edge of the churning abyss, one feels the force of the water, the immensity of the hidden cavity, and the weight of uncertainty all at once. The swirling eddies, the roar of the falls, and the impossibility of seeing the bottom create a visceral reminder of the limits of human perception. Unlike a clear river or predictable waterfall, the kettle offers no resolution. It swallows, conceals, and preserves its secret. This subtle unease resonates with the themes explored throughout this documentary: ancient pyramids, subterranean tunnels, and enigmatic artifacts, where what is hidden challenges our understanding and provokes contemplation. The mystery of the kettle is compounded by its dynamic environment. Water entering the hole is subject to complex fluid mechanics, turbulence, and interactions with irregular rock formations that make the paths unpredictable. Over time, shifting sediments, seasonal water flow, and natural erosion alter the internal channels, further complicating attempts to trace the water's course. These natural processes create a sense of impermanence and unpredictability, mirroring the uncertainty inherent in many ancient mysteries. The site demonstrates that even in the modern era, with advanced technology and understanding of physics, nature can retain secrets that defy immediate comprehension. Scientific investigation has gradually illuminated parts of the kettle's behavior. Recent studies using dye tracing and sonar mapping revealed that much of the water eventually rejoins the main river downstream, though not always in ways that are intuitively visible. While this partially resolves the mystery, it does not diminish the psychological impact. The knowledge that the water's path is circuitous, hidden, and largely invisible maintains a sense of the uncanny. The Devil's Kettle reminds us that some mysteries persist not because they are unsolvable, but because the experience of uncertainty itself is compelling, drawing attention to the boundaries between observation, expectation, and reality. The Devil's Kettle also evokes metaphorical reflection, connecting natural phenomena with human cognition and imagination. Like the hidden tunnels of Teotihuacan or the disappeared meanings of the Indus script, the kettle represents a threshold where the known meets the unknown. Observers confront the limits of perception, grappling with forces that operate beyond direct human control. This encounter with uncertainty fosters a quiet sense of humility and curiosity, encouraging reflection on the broader mysteries of existence, time, and nature. The site's power lies not only in its physical characteristics, but in its capacity to engage the human mind in contemplation and wonder. Visitors often report a combination of exhilaration and subtle anxiety when standing near the abyss. The sheer vertical drop, the rhythmic roar of water, and the unpredictable eddies create a sensory experience that is both captivating and disconcerting. This mirrors emotional responses elicited by ancient structures and artifacts explored earlier. The acoustic corridors of Malta, the towering stones of Stonehenge, or the precise geometries of the Nazca Lines. In each case, scale, perception, and the unknown converge to evoke awe and curiosity. The Devil's Kettle, though a product of natural forces rather than human hands, demonstrates that mystery can arise from the intersection of environment, perception, and uncertainty. The site also invites broader reflection on the human impulse to explore, measure, and understand. For centuries, locals, scientists, and tourists attempted to probe the kettle, deploying rudimentary tools, dropping objects, and later employing modern instruments. Each attempt reflects a desire to conquer uncertainty and impose order on the inexplicable. Yet the kettle consistently resists complete mastery, highlighting the enduring tension between knowledge and the unknowable. This dynamic echoes the experience of encountering ancient mysteries. Human curiosity drives exploration, yet some elements remain tantalizingly beyond comprehension, preserving their enigmatic power. Finally, the Devil's Kettle illustrates the interplay of scale and perception. A relatively small feature in the landscape, a hole in the rock, becomes profoundly mysterious when contrasted with the familiar behavior of water. Its size, depth, and churning dynamics create a dramatic shift in perception, transforming an ordinary stream into a site of awe and psychological engagement. This manipulation of perception is a common thread throughout the documentary. From massive pyramids to meticulously placed stones, from hidden tunnels to precise spheres, the combination of scale, placement, and concealment generates curiosity, wonder, and subtle unease. As this section concludes, the narrative prepares to shift from natural enigmas to the culmination of human ingenuity and fear in ancient history. The Devil's Kettle, with its hidden depths and unresolved paths, serves as a natural bridge to the final reflection on humanity's enduring fascination with the unknown. Just as water vanishes into the abyss, so too do the secrets of ancient civilizations, hidden in stone, earth, and imagination, inviting us to explore, contemplate, and marvel at the mysteries that persist across time and space. Throughout human history, certain places, objects, and phenomena have captivated our imagination not merely because they are impressive or beautiful, but because they resist full understanding. From the Nazca Lines stretching across arid plains to the hidden tunnels beneath Teotihuacan, from the precise spheres of Costa Rica to the enigmatic Devil's Kettle, a recurring theme emerges: the intersection of human skill, natural forces, and the unknown. These mysteries, whether crafted by ancient hands or shaped by the earth itself, engage something deep within us, a blend of curiosity, awe, and subtle unease. In this penultimate section, we reflect on why these enigmas continue to fascinate and how they reveal not only the ingenuity of past civilizations, but also the limits and resilience of human perception. One of the most compelling aspects of these mysteries is their deliberate ambiguity. Human beings naturally seek meaning, patterns, and explanations, yet the artifacts and sites we have explored often deny simple interpretation. The Doga figurines of the Jaman, with their exaggerated eyes and contorted forms, communicate presence and intention without words. The Indus script provides tantalizing symbols whose full meaning remains inaccessible. Even natural formations like the Devil's Kettle exploit our expectations of the physical world, creating phenomena that appear to defy logic. This deliberate or accidental opacity forces us into a state of suspended inquiry, where fascination is sustained by uncertainty and the imagination becomes an active participant in the encounter. Another unifying quality of these mysteries is their engagement with perception and scale. Large or carefully aligned structures, such as Stonehenge or the Nazca Lines, manipulate how we experience space, movement, and perspective. The stone spheres of Costa Rica achieve a similar effect through geometric perfection, provoking reflection through symmetry, placement, and tactile presence. Even subterranean environments, like the Malta Hypogeum or Teotihuacan's tunnels, use enclosure, sound, and progression through space to evoke emotion and contemplation. In all cases, these ancient creators, whether human or natural, demonstrated an intuitive understanding of psychological impact. They shaped experiences that guided attention, elicited awe, and, in subtle ways, cultivated a quiet unease, reminding observers of the boundary between the known and the unknowable. The emotional resonance of these mysteries also derives from the passage of time. Centuries or millennia separate modern observers from the hands, minds, and cultures responsible for their creation. Time itself amplifies intrigue. Stone, soil, and sediment preserve traces of human intention, yet the context is often lost. Each site or object becomes a fragment of a larger, unknowable story, preserved in silence, scale, and placement. The longevity of these creations, the endurance of geoglyphs, stone structures, and natural formations, reminds us that human curiosity and perception are entwined with temporal continuity. Encountering these enduring enigmas is a way of connecting across time, participating in a dialogue that transcends generations. A subtle tension between control and unpredictability also heightens their allure. Ancient builders exerted remarkable mastery over materials, geometry, and environment. Yet even the most precise constructions retain elements of mystery. The Nazca Lines are mathematically exact, yet evoke unknown purpose. Stonehenge aligns with the sun and moon, yet the meaning behind its construction remains speculative. Similarly, the Devil's Kettle appears governed by natural law, yet retains an unknowable pathway. This balance between human mastery and the persistence of the unknown mirrors the human experience of curiosity itself. Even when we achieve understanding, new layers of uncertainty emerge, inviting further exploration and contemplation. These mysteries also highlight a recurring dialogue between the tangible and intangible. Physical presence, the weight of a sarsen stone, the smooth perfection of a sphere, the echoing walls of a hypogeum, interacts with symbolic or psychological meaning, creating a holistic experience that engages multiple senses and dimensions of thought. The objects and sites we have examined do not merely exist. They act in subtle ways upon the observer. They manipulate perception, provoke reflection, and inspire awe, blending artistry, functionality, and enigma into an inseparable whole. This interplay between material reality and cognitive experience exemplifies the enduring power of ancient mysteries. Finally, these enigmatic creations remind us of humanity's persistent quest for understanding and transcendence. Across continents and millennia, people have sought to bridge the gap between the earthly and the cosmic, the visible and the invisible, the known and the unknown. Whether through ritual tunnels, geometric perfection, subterranean chambers, or mysterious natural phenomena, humans have consistently crafted experiences that push the boundaries of perception, belief, and imagination. The resonance of these sites today underscores a universal impulse to confront uncertainty, explore possibility, and connect with something larger than ourselves. Mystery, it seems, is not merely an obstacle to understanding, but a tool for engaging the human mind, cultivating wonder, and fostering reflection. As this section draws to a close, the cumulative effect of these explorations becomes clear. From the expansive desert geoglyphs of Peru to the hidden caverns of Malta, from the sculpted figurines of Japan to the natural wonder of the Devil's Kettle, each site and artifact embodies a blend of intention, skill, and secrecy that continues to captivate. Their power lies not only in what they are, but in what they withhold, inviting observers into a state of sustained curiosity. These ancient and natural enigmas are reminders that even in a world dominated by technology, measurement, and explanation, there remain spaces where the unknown holds sway, a persistent, quiet thrill that engages our imagination, challenges our understanding, and subtly terrifies in its silence.